Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Annie and Kate. Hello, Annie.
Hey, Kate, how are you going?
I'm well, thank you. And today we have our guest, Pip Stocks, who Annie is going to introduce.
Welcome, Pip. It's great to finally meet you, sort of in real life. We've been Twitter buddies for quite some time now. So welcome to the show. I'll just do a quick introduction and then we'll just take it from there. So Pip is the founder and CEO of Brand Hook, which is a brand and customer experience consulting company. And she's also, because she's not busy enough with that already, building another company called Hearsay, which is basically like SurveyMonkey, but for qualitative conversations. So I think what we'll probably learn a little bit more about is that both of those businesses are quite linked. She is super passionate about helping clients understand how to use data for competitive advantage. She's lived overseas. She's back here in Australia now. She also works with CEOs and exec teams, again, to help them drive and build better customer experiences. She's a podcaster, a keynote speaker, a regular industry commentator. And by the way, if you've got any hints and tips for us on podcasting, please let us know, because our production values are pretty low, aren't they, Kate? Look, I think one of the things that we're also going to learn a little bit more about is how COVID hit you and the plans that you had for your business as well. And it'd be great to dig into that a little bit. So welcome to the show.
Oh my God, it's so exciting. Thank you. I'm in the office, which is fantastic. So there's a few people hovering around. So I'm hiding in a room. I hope you can't, not too noisy.
We've been interrupted by dogs, people, kids, cats. Really doesn't matter. Everybody's welcome on this show.
Lucky I'm not at home, because I did have a Zoom meeting once where I've got two boys, teenagers, 14 and 15, and one of them decided to walk out naked. And I said, I'm actually on a Zoom. And he went, yeah, I don't care. Where's this? Like he was holding his bits. And I was like, work, people, work. Anyway.
Oh, I hope you recorded it.
Oh my God. I just was like, okay, there's nothing that's going to shock me. Nothing.
Love it. So let's kick off the call. Kate, do you want to ask your first open question?
I will. So I want to ask you if you practice self-care, and if you do, what kind of self-care you do?
It's interesting because in COVID, in 2019, I decided to give up drinking for a year because I was 50. I'm actually drinking a non-alcoholic beer.
Oh.
So I decided to give up for a year. I'd had other girlfriends that have done it as they turned 50, and I'd always wanted to do it. So I thought, I'm going to do it. I didn't tell anyone I wasn't drinking for about 8 weeks, because all my friends are raving boozers and party people, and they would have, disowned me. So I actually fake drank for about 8 weeks, and they didn't even notice. I did have, in full disclosure, 14 drinks when we went into lockdown, because, well, we can talk about that later. But I do. It was great. So I gave up for a year. So I completely changed my drinking life. So I don't really drink that much, and when I do, it's kind of just a couple of glasses. So that's one thing. I also, in that year, did a lot of work on myself, like wanted to understand more about removing myself from kind of the negativity, and I suppose they call it your limiting beliefs, and I wanted to move more into the kind of magical side of life. So I did a bit of work around that. And I go do Pilates and yoga, and I haven't done much over the last 2 weeks, and so I can feel my body very much tightening up. And meditate. I do some meditation as well.
Well, that's a lot. So you found that's each of them has its own place, or is it that one sort of perhaps is the overriding thing that helps you more than the others?
I think it's the combination for me, actually. I'm one of those people that kind of needs a few different things going on at the same time. So, like we started walking with the girls in the area on a Saturday morning, and we've kept that up. So we 4 of us go for a walk, and they're all kind of, got big jobs and stuff. So there's lots of work chat. I think the one Pilates, one yoga, and then I try and meditate for at least 10 minutes every day. And I feel like that combination works for me, actually.
Cool. It's great that you found a combination of things that work for you.
Yeah. I mean, and I notice when I'm edgy, some of those things that will have fallen off. Like at the moment, I haven't really done as much exercise as I've wanted to. So yeah, I can feel myself just getting tight and a bit like, I might kill someone soon. So it's a good combination actually. I'm not a runner. I'm out of breath walking upstairs. I'm just, I've never really been into running, but I do like a brisk walk and a stretch.
Yes, I do love a brisk walk as well. I've got into running recently, not because I actually wanted to, but the COVID kilos need to leave my body. And honestly, I can't find a different way to exercise for a limited amount of time and get the same results, which is so frustrating because I really don't enjoy it at all. But it is what it is, and it's good for my lungs, it's good for my heart, it's good for my body, so I'll suck it up and get on with it.
If you want to get skinny, running's the only way to get skinny, I reckon.
Yeah, well, other than properly sort of limiting your diet and all of the other things, which I'm not willing to do either.
Yeah, that's too hard.
It is too hard. Now my question for you, Pip, if you could go back to your younger self, you can pick any age that you would like. If you could go back to your younger self and give her any advice, what advice would you give?
Oh gosh, I think I can be kind of funny and stupid and silly, but I don't always bring that, and I think I've probably edited myself at times, thinking that I needed to be super professional, or there are other very clever people in the room that I need to try and be very clever with, and actually I'm just funny, and I'm at my best when I'm being funny and a bit irreverent. And so I think I would have told myself to be confident enough to hang on to that, and not to lose that part of yourself as you kind of go through working out who you are, because I know that when I'm not doing that, and I'm not being a bit of an idiot, or I'm not being funny about something, or I'm not kind of being irreverent about something. Like I remember in London skateboarding up and down the agency corridors, and there was something about being Australian at that time in London that it allowed me to be my true self, of being, just, irreverent. And there weren't as many Aussies in London at that time. So it was kind of still a bit of a novelty. So, I think when I lose that side of myself, I actually lose who I really am. And I would have told myself that at 12, 13, teenage girl years. Oh, hideous. They were so awful.
Funny, isn't it? I have lots of other friends who are, sort of mid-40s coming up to their 50s and talking about, they miss being in their 20s. And I really don't. I'm certainly the happiest now. And I think it is largely down to what you just said, Pip, around I don't edit myself anymore. I'm exactly this all the time. I can wear flip-flops to the office if I want to. I don't have to put on a dress and a pair of heels and makeup. And it's never actually been me. So all of those sort of first 15 or 20 years of my career, I was sort of a diluted version of myself.
Yeah. I noticed I did something the other day, and I had second-guessed myself when I was thinking I was making some kind of funny remark back on email, and I'm on a board, so it was all the board directors, and I thought, no, fuck it, this is me. And I made just kind of funny, smart remark, and no one replied, and no one jumped in on the humor, and I'm like going, oh, anyway, I'm just kind of going, well, that's me, that's who I am. I'm not gonna, think about that anymore.
One of the reasons why we kind of made sure that you got on the podcast sooner rather than later was I think I tweeted something out about 2 or 3 weeks ago talking about how the research and the data points to the older you are, the more successful you are as a founder. And that actually the statistics show that typically the best or most productive and most sort of positive outcomes come from founders who are in their late 40s and 50s. And you immediately tweeted back going, yes, I finally see myself. So do you want to talk to us a little bit more about what that kind of commentary meant to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you may have posted up a story as well. I think there may have been a story attached to it as well. And I was going to do a year, how Kirsten Ferguson did a year of congratulating women, I think a couple of years ago. Yeah. And I was lucky to be in that first month. I think I must have just seen it on holiday and tweeted her back. I was going to do a year of all the people that had received funding and pictures of all the blokes and 25-year-old blokes who had received funding for their idea. And I was going to do it under a pretend Twitter thing. And I thought, no, fuck that. Actually, I'm going to do what I really should be doing is all the stories about women who are actually getting funding and being successful, because I don't want to perpetuate. I want to see myself. I think that's the problem, is that, you don't see as many stories about yourself. And then the stories you see, they're just so rare. The stories about women doing well, women getting funding. And I was really, it's that seeing is believing idea. You come out. We just did the Skalata Ventures program, so we've been funded for our idea, which is fantastic, and doing well out of that. And one of the things I actually said to them was, I went in thinking I can pull this off. And when I came out of the program, I was even questioning whether I could do it. And I think that kind of believing in that little bit of magic, and it's like seeing other people do it. There's a little bit of magic attached to this whole thing, isn't it? Because we're kind of all making it all up. So it's good to see that other people, particularly other women and older women, are actually doing it as well. We just don't talk about it as much. We're not as vocal about what we're doing. And I think maybe that has to change.
Yeah, I think there's something in there as well about I call it the relatable hero piece. You need to see more women talking about building a technology business or building a business full stop and considering scaling it and needing funding to do that. But I also think we need to see women who are only a little bit further ahead than us. Not put Marissa Mayer on stage and go, well, there you go, you can be her. You're like, well, no, I can't do that. That's like 57 steps ahead of me in 10 years, and how do I even get there? But if you see people who are just a little bit further ahead, then it's still relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only really 18 months into this journey, so there's lots of stuff that I felt like I've learned, and I think being able to share that with people that are coming through just behind you is great. I'm a Rare Birds mentor, and they're also running that Sydney Propel Her stuff, and I gave a couple of talks through that, and a couple of the girls have contacted me separately, and one of them said, I just wanted to quickly grab you and ask you a few questions because I feel like you're kind of in it. And I went, yes, exactly, like I'm not that far ahead of you actually. And she said, what do I do about this, and how do I understand what my proposition is? And I said, oh, well, what we did was, and you're right. It's so much easier when you feel like someone's within your vicinity. And I think that the confidence that comes with going out and wanting to raise money, you have to have you have to have gumption, and you have to have belief. And I think that level of confidence is not something that I don't think women have that. I think we have to work hard at being confident. I don't think I wasn't, and my peers would be the same. We weren't raised with the same level of confidence as our male friends. So we have to work much harder at feeling all sassy about stuff. But I do think you need that. You need that kind of.
So how do you do that? How do you make yourself step out and do stuff that you weren't necessarily raised to do?
I suppose it's a combination of incredible fear because you're just like going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I mean, you are fearful of it. I'm really driven and I'm curious. I think the really big thing for me is I am super curious. And so I was like, oh, this looks good. Oh, someone wants this. Oh, I'm going to build a product. I wonder what that's like. Oh, let's just do it. And I think being curious and wanting to start a business and I want to start a tech business, even though I don't understand, I've got no tech background at all. Oh, and now I want to do this. And so I suppose I'm super curious, and that might be really the reason why I'm pushing myself so hard to do this stuff, because I feel like it's interesting.
I'm also interested, before we started, you were talking about a new appointment that you've made in your business.
A CTO.
Yeah,
he started today. I've got a sales guy started 2 weeks ago, and today we've got a CTO. it's amazing. He's going to change my life. I'm going to actually have someone who understands the product in detail, instead of just looking vaguely at the people who are building it. It's fascinating. It's to have someone with that level of detail and can understand the product with that level of detail, I think will be amazing.
And tell us a little bit more about how you went from, you were building your consulting practice and then decided to build, a software solution that could scale. Was that just because you could see the opportunity and you're like, well, I know how to build this, it better be me, because if someone else builds it, it'll be rubbish?
Yeah, I suppose a bit of all of that. I think it was the anchor that actually our clients had asked for it. So I suppose that was the first thing. Well, actually, there must be something in this if we're being asked to teach people about what we do. And then it was, well, how do you deliver that in the best way? So we were delivering it in workshops, and then clients were saying, well, okay, now I know how to have a conversation. Can you actually still do recruitment? And then can you actually help us understand all the data that we're getting back? Excuse me. So when we looked at it, when I looked at it and I thought, maybe I could do those cards. Do you remember those cards, IDEO cards that used to use for workshops? I actually built 51 IDEO cards on bits of paper and put them in a pretend box and went, oh yeah, this is what we can do. We can give them the IDEO cards and they can have their questions. And then actually it just ended up, for some reason, felt very comfortable being a platform. And at that time, no one had really played with doing an end-to-end qual kind of conversations process. There's lots of quant tools, as it's Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey and all those Typeform. There's lots and lots of quantitative products. I know now why they've built that, because I think we've picked the hardest thing to do.
It's much harder.
But so it just felt like that. So then you start, and once you're in it, you can't go back. You kind of go, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And my husband's amazing. He's from Finland, so he's incredibly supportive, very egalitarian. It is what it is. And not, never once has he said, do you think this is a good idea? It's just, okay, I'm just going to keep moving. And I think if I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, I'll just get another little bit, and then I'll get another little bit. And I suppose that's kind of what I've done. Yeah. With the consultancy, I felt like that had an end date. It was running its course, I suppose.
And
do you think that's sort of generally true? Sorry, Annie. Do you feel that's sort of generally true of consulting, that the consulting's kind of going to die eventually?
It's interesting because people have said to me, well, aren't you cannibalizing your own business? I said, hopefully, in some ways, yes. I mean, I think consulting will be around for those big projects, those really big meaty things that require intellect and require, someone to sit down and really think about something. And they'll be like the big 200, 300, maybe those kind of big projects that need to be outsourced and might take 6 months. I think there's still a role for that. There just won't be as many of those projects available, but there'll still be a role for that. It's the things that clients should know. I mean, they should know what's making their customers tick. And the problem with the consultancies is that they've been owning the IP of the customer for way too long. Like I would have clients ring me up and say, if we did this, what do you think our customers would think? And I go, in my mind, well, you should know the answer. And then I would say, this is what they would think, So I don't think the consulting is dead, but there is a lot of studies that are saying that a lot of, internally there is a shift back into a business when it comes to, what we're doing, DIY tools, even you can see it with the digital tools, people are more open to doing things themselves if they have a system that's easy and simple, I think.
And then talk to us a little bit about how you've basically had to navigate through COVID as well. So you mentioned that your startup, your business, your new one is just over a year old, I think. So I think that pretty much puts you just before the pandemic hit and you started out. So talk to us a little bit about what that's been like.
Yeah. I mean, so we commissioned the product build. I called the first round of the product a commercial MVP. So people were paying for it, but it was very simple, had a very linear sort of pathway. You couldn't do too much, deviate from the basic product. So we commissioned that to be built in 2009, end of 2019, all beautiful. I go and spend 3 weeks in Byron Bay for my 50th as a real treat to myself, take the boys, and we all have a great time. Swanning around, life's great, and product being built, great. And then come back 2 weeks before COVID lockdown, we launch with one method of customer conversation, which is through the app. So you can set up your project on the platform on your desktop, and then you take your phone, because it's all ethnographic in swing. We believe in ethnographic research. So you would take your phone to your customer's home or meet them at Coles or Woolies or wherever, and you have your conversation. You tag as you go. You can take some notes, and then you go, thank you very much, I'm going home. Well, we couldn't talk to anyone. We couldn't see anyone. You couldn't leave 5Ks without your radius. And I remember at one point the boys were in their bedrooms doing homeschooling, which was a disaster. And my husband was in the middle of the house trying to run his business, and I'm on the bedroom floor howling into some tissues. Like I'd had these, for some reason I grabbed the tissues and I'm literally howling on the floor. And my sister, Arto rang my sister and said, I think you need to come over. I can't get her off the floor. So she's in the 5Ks. She rescued me and we went for a walk, and then I kind of dusted myself off and I went, right, I'm dropping in video. So we got 2 projects in before lockdown, which were good case studies, really good client. And then we spent the next 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I think, dropping in video. So we became a platform that you could talk to customers in 2 ways.
That kind of agility is really a great example of how people have survived COVID. Did you have any idea that you were going to do video before that?
It was always kind of in our minds, but we just needed to launch with something to start with. And, being kind of the mindset, you need to be as ingrained in your customers' lives as possible. The face-to-face one kind of made most sense. Yeah, I mean, you do, I think, I don't know whether it's brave or stupidity or what, but the ability to kind of consume yourself with the chaos and be sad and be stressed and be worried about it, but then kind of, I mean, relatively quickly pull yourself up and say, right, how can I move? I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's the only way I could describe this experience for me, because if I actually thought too far ahead, I really wouldn't do it. I probably would have just sat very comfortably in my consultancy business and got a few board positions and sat down and rested. But that's not really who I am. And, I do have a passion that businesses should be talking to customers themselves and not necessarily just through big data, that the conversation is important. Mm-hmm. Talking to people is important. So I suppose that's what just kept me going.
Did you always have this idea that you wanted to do something like this, or was this something that just sort of evolved and then you started just putting one foot in front of the other? I'm really interested in this.
I've always wanted to run my own business. Even one of my early bosses in London said to me, when I started Brand Talk, she said, of course you have. You were always talking about starting your own business. I wasn't, at that. I mean, I was in London during the first .com bust and boom. I was a marketing manager at Virgin. I wish I'd taken more notice, actually. I think we spent a lot of time down in Soho. But there was, we started Virgin Energy, which was an online energy business. So it was very revolutionary for its day. It didn't last very long because who cares about energy? And, it was an online proposition and people just weren't used to that. It was a completely different way of behaving. We got bought by London Electricity. So I obviously had in my mind, I thought, well, this is an interesting space. And during the Brand Hook journey, I'd created products that I wanted to productize part of our service, but I just never really got any of them off the ground. So this is the one that really felt, like it had proper legs, actually.
And you mentioned, you'd always had that curiosity and you wanted to try different things. Was that something that, you were born with? Did your parents nurture it? Was it just something that kind of is strong in your family?
I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I think raised in a pretty staunch Catholic upbringing, actually. Although everyone pretty much freestyles these days. No one really. So yeah, we're all a bit free spirited. Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose it's a family trait. I mean, my brother's got his own business. Another brother's retired now, and I've got a lot of teachers in our family. So learning and teaching and being learners, I'd say we're avid readers. Where we all talk about books. I've got a philosopher as an uncle. So I suppose there's always been debate. We've always sat around the family table and debated things. Yeah, so I suppose that is part of my upbringing.
It's funny that's, debate was a very big part of my Catholic upbringing too.
Oh, did you sit around the table and debate family issues, or was it like more kind of current stuff?
Current affairs and news. So when we sat down to watch the news, my dad would always want you to have an opinion about what was being talked about.
Yeah. We watched, Mum and Dad, we always watched the news, and we kind of knew what was going on. There was a lot of that conversation, and we all travelled, we're all been big travellers. So I suppose it's a family trait, but I do think you can foster it in people, and I think it's one of the great values that you can help people with, because I think being curious is one of those things that does keep you learning, keep you interested in people. Like I know when people, I meet new people, it's, oh wow, where are you from, and what are you up to, and how did you get here, and how do you know so and so, and trying to make those connections. I think it's a good quality to have.
What's it been like for you as a business owner, and starting multiple businesses and also being a mum? How do you juggle both of those?
Two boys. I mean, honestly, sometimes I can't. I actually wanted a third child. My husband's 5 years younger than me, and when I turned 40, I said to him, right, come on, we better get going here. And he came home with a present, and it was a push bike, and he said, this is Stella, this is the third child. I was like, right, okay, thanks, great, so that's clear. I said, I'm one of 6, I can't just have 2 kids. He said, I only wanted 1, so well done, double, you got double. It's funny, I suppose. I mean, how do I manage it? You have to be super organized, obviously, and that sounds really boring, but you have to be really organized. We do this fun, Arto and I do this thing every Sunday night where it's almost like Arto's favorite part of the week. I don't know why, but he's very organized, being, sort of the Scandinavian flavor. And he says, it's diary time. I'm like going, oh God, do we have to do? So we sit down together with our diaries and we go through the week and we work out, okay, so what have you got on? Who's going to be home for this? Blah, 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 blah. What's happening there? I suppose we're just super organized. I mean,
it sounds like you've got a real partnership though.
Yeah. Arto's amazing. Honestly, he's a very equal partner in every aspect. Yeah, as I said, there's never, ever been any question marks about whether I should be running my own business or whether I should be taking a pay cut to start this thing, or, like we've just made it work. Like we couldn't, we had to rejig all our finances so that, I could be a non-salaried, non-tech founder, basically. But he's very good like that. But he was raised in Finland. Like they don't even have gender in their language. Like, so it's not it. Yeah. So when you think about it, there's no he or she.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, and I only thought of it the other day because when he first moved here, he used to call everybody the wrong gender, and we'd have girlfriends coming over. He goes, "What time is he coming?" And I go, "She." Oh yeah, she. So he'd always confuse genders, and it made me think the other day that he's never ever been a domineering kind of outrageous, you do as I say kind of husband. It's all very much equal. And I thought about that and I thought they don't even have gender in their language. I mean, that's incredible.
That is insane. I had no idea. I've learned something very important here, and we've spoken about this with a few other guests on the show as well, which was sort of more about not be careful who you choose as a life partner, but it will be a huge influence on pretty much everything that happens after you decide to be with that person. So good choice.
I know. He
sounds like an excellent ad though.
He's a nice guy. He's quite handsome. He's younger than me, like ticks all the boxes.
Not to like.
Yeah, no, he's a nice guy. He's more of an introvert than I am. We don't, he's not the loudest guy at the party, but he's very warm. People really like him. He's got that kind of funny thing that the Finnish have, is that they can appear quite well, not cold, but they can appear quite reserved. But once you kind of scratch the surface a little bit, they're very warm people actually. And he's got his sister's got a business in Finland, I think that's part of why I'm able to do this actually.
Life partner choices are very important for success, I think. And you don't realise it when you're young. Sorry about that. Sorry, Maximus agrees, obviously.
Yes, Maximus is very clear on that point. And look, the boys are a challenge in some ways. I mean, as a feminist mother, I say to them, you can't say that. That is totally inappropriate. They try and have arguments with me of crap they've learnt off TikTok, and I'm like, Wow. When you can have a more, I understand you have a view, and I love it that you want to have a view, fantastic, but maybe come to me with a little bit more research, because that's just not true. So, and, they're at a boys' school, so we kind of sent them to a more traditional route. Arsho's outraged. He says to me, I can't believe we're paying for school, because in Finland it's free, and they've got the best education system in the world. He just says this is ridiculous. And I'm like, I know, it is a bit ridiculous.
And are you finding that going to an all-boys school, let's face it, Australia is, a little bit misogynist. Is that starting to kind of influence them as young men, do you think?
I mean, they're very, they've really, experimental, particularly Ollie, the older one. He's 15. He likes to be out and about. Christian likes to be a bit more home. But Ollie's, definitely feeling his way around the world. And I was like that as well. I mean, it's fun, going out and experiencing things. And I say to them, I want you out there. I want you experiencing things. But, it comes with a whole lot of things that you need to also be like, respectful and kind. And, they'll turn out okay because they've got the parents that they have who are quite passionate about them being good people. But there's a lot of things that come home that you think, where do you get that from? Well, you get that from being at an all boys school, and it is a bit Lord of the Flies. I mean, particularly year 7 and 8. It's horrible, and I went to a girls' school. I mean, from a very young age, I don't know. I mean, it was probably the same. I don't remember so much. I don't have a great memory. It's hard. It's really hard. You do feel like you're often always having to correct. Right. I'm often saying, let's just have a chat about that, because I don't think that's a very cool thing to say. And I wanted to understand a bit more about why you have that opinion. So, it's interesting because when I grew up, and I don't know whether it's a function of being part of a big family, I don't think mum and dad watched one of my netball matches. I think they were very happily dropping us all off and then going to sit quietly by themselves, I'm sure. Whereas we're quite involved in their lives, like on the weekends you're running them around at different sports, and you like it because there's other parents there and it's all kind of part of the community. So you're probably more aware, I have to remind them that I was naughty. So, if you're sneaking out and you're vaping and you're having an odd beer, it won't be because we don't know you are. You're not allowed, you're not to be drinking till you're 18. You're certainly not to be vaping. And I wouldn't recommend sneaking out of home because it's cold. But, your parents were naughty. So we kind of know what you're up to.
I love that. We've done it all before, my friend. We know the truth, so don't lie.
And see, my parents didn't do that. They weren't naughty. I mean, they were, war babies. My mum's 90 in a couple of weeks. So they were really well behaved and did the right thing. And so they had no idea what we were doing.
Well, that's a really huge generation gap, but there's a much less of a generation gap in terms of what we got up to and what kids today get up to, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think about some of my friends who are a bit more wild, they'll have quite large Saturday nights, and they'll have all their friends over, and they might be up dancing till 2 a.m. I mean, mum and dad had dinner parties, but everyone was home. Everyone kind of left by 12. And I don't know. I just think that, there's a very big gap between how my parents lived as teenagers and how I lived. And I don't think that's that big a gap between me and my kids, even though we're 38 years apart or something.
So going back to the business, you've mentioned that you've got your CTO on board, you've got your sales or head of sales joined a couple of weeks ago, new version of the product launched today, I think.
Yes.
What's your vision for this business? What would you love to happen in, let's wind the clock forward, say 3 or 5 years, where will you be by then?
You say we'll become like that API button. It's you've done your data stuff, you've got your numbers, you've looked at those numbers, you've got a number, but you don't understand why. Oh, quick, let's press on the hearsay button, and I'm going to go and explore why. And that's really the vision for the business. It becomes kind of the natural go-to when you want to understand more about the human story. So
it's like having an anthropologist in a box.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And you press the hearsay button and all the magic happens for you. So you merely set up your project, all the recruitment of the customer happens because, or the stakeholders, whoever you're talking to. You've also, you're having your conversations, all the data then is held, and you're tagging it, and there's beautiful AI, and I don't even know what that looks like yet because I don't really understand what can it do, but it will be amazing. And I think also the other thing I think is also about the workplace has lots of conversations. It's not just the marketing department talking to customers. There's legal departments, there's HR departments, I mean, wouldn't it be great if we were the workplace conversations tool, that anytime you need to have a conversation that has meaning, that you need to really grab insights from, no matter where you are in the business, that you use hearsay to do that. It's the go-to for that.
I need to introduce you to a friend of mine who's doing a similar sort of thing for call centers. Maybe you might have an interesting collaboration.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, there is some interesting things going on in the call centers, particularly in the States, actually. There was one company I found probably around 18 months ago, and they seem to be doing some interesting things too. But yeah, no, love to. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah.
And how about the advice you might have for perhaps, say, any other women out there who are in their late 40s, early 50s thinking, I can't do this, I can't start a company, I don't know anything about technology, I don't know how to build a business. What advice would you have for them?
I think the first bit of advice is I think you have to imagine what you want your life to be at like 50 or 60. So I don't think retirement is something that people really do anymore. I mean, I've got a brother who desperately wanted to retire, and now he's retired. He's bored out of his brain.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So I think that concept of retirement, it doesn't really exist. And I think, the idea that you'll always kind of, sort of do something, whether it's, whatever it is you should decide to do, you'll always do something. So I think you have to think about that. What is that thing that I actually want to do that when I'm a bit older? And for me, what drove me to it was that I have a real passion for gender equality, as you know. I have a real passion for females in business, because even in the brand hook business, I could always see the boys, getting the deals and having the lunches, and I'm going home to make a crappy pasta or something. So all of that kind of, I thought, well, I know what kind of life I want there, and I think I can be really useful. But to do that, I feel like I have to have that credibility myself. So I think my advice to women is look at what you want to do later. Look at what your skill sets are now, and what are you actually building that is in part of your strengths. I think if you do too many things that are outside, I mean, you've got to learn and you've got to be curious, but you still have to anchor yourself in your strengths. So what am I actually really good at? And what can I then expand to so that I can actually build something that is of use. Like you want to build something that where users or customers are abundant. I feel I want to have a platform where there's just millions of people in it all the time and I love it. I think you have to want that, and you have to build it on your strengths, thinking about a little bit about where you want to be. I'm not sure that answered the question. Sorry.
No, it does. It does. And I think it's such an important point that you make about looking at your skills that you have and how you can generalize them to support your idea for a business. And, you know, so often people don't look at themselves as having generalizable skills. So it's a really important insight, I think.
Yeah. And I think, you know, springboarding from where you are as well. Like, you know, this was a natural springboard from what we were already doing. We just happened to do it in a very kind of consultancy fashion. What we want to do now is do it in a SaaS productized version. So it's actually a system that we know how to build. Obviously, it will expand, but we started with something that we knew how to do well.
And that is probably the best advice. Thank you very much. Really great to have you, Pip. Thanks. Nice to see you, Annie.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Annie. So nice to see you in person. Oh, semi in person.
Yes, it will happen in person at some point soon, we hope.
Oh, we are totally having cocktails as soon as everybody's had their jabs.
Oh, yes. I actually cancelled my AstraZeneca jab because I felt a bit run down. So I have to rebook it in, actually.
Excellent idea. Anyway, thanks very much for being with us and looking forward to meeting up with you in real life over a drink.
Thank you.